yes, I've got a lot of work to do, but love this group. There's been a hunger and a desire to get better, a very purposeful group, a very invested group. It's been very evident since January when we came back in the spring semester to get to work. And I can't wait to get out on the field tomorrow. I told them earlier, and it's the truth, I don't think I've ever been more excited about starting practice in a season than I am this one. And it's because of the people that we have on our roster and the type of young men they are, the leadership we have, the hunger they have, how invested they are. So got a lot of work to do, but really excited about the people I get to do it with starting tomorrow morning on the practice field. So with that, any questions? Does David still get the first one even though he missed the – all right. Yeah. Blame Mother Nature. Blame God. I mean, weather and rain came in.
Shane, is there one position group or position competition that you're looking at more than any other over these next 30 days that says we've got to take care of that above all?
Yeah, great question. Yes and no. I think there's a lot. I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I really do believe there's multiple. We met as a staff this morning, and I talked about all the things that really excite me about this team, which there's a lot, but then all of the things that are, I don't want to say concerns, but are questions that we have to answer, and there's multiple. And who the kicker is going to be, is something that we have to figure out. What does that I'm going to go through basically every position, David, I'm sorry, but essentially, okay, if O'Donnell Fortune's coming into the season as one starting corner, what does that opposite corner battle look like? Nick Emanwari and DQ Smith come into the preseason as our two starting safeties. What does the depth look like behind those guys? How is this linebacker rotation going to shake out? Because you guys have heard me say it. We basically had a 3-man rotation last year. I feel confident saying that we could have as much as a 7-8-man rotation as far as guys, if they continue to come along, that I feel like can help us win SEC football games. What does that shake out, or how does that shake out? Same thing, we feel good about the D-line group, but what's the rotation there? Obviously, everybody wants to talk about the offensive line and the receiver position. So I would probably say that one to answer your question, just what it looks like. Not that we don't have capable people, because we do, but we've got more depth and athleticism and competition than last year on really every position, but particularly on the offensive line and at the receiver position. And it's the truth that if you ask me today, what will the starting 5 look like on the offensive line game 1, and who are your top 6 receivers game 1, it really truly is still to be determined. So I think a little bit of everything. There's competition. What does Lenoris and Robbie in that situation? How does that continue to come along? Davis Bevel, but probably most pertinent, most important right now would be, they're all important, but the most up in the air probably the receiver rotation and how that shakes out.
You mentioned that the summer was elite this summer. Can you point to 2 or 3 kind of tangible things that took it from really, really, really good to elite?
I think obviously the physical part of it, when you just look at how some of these guys have changed their bodies this summer, whether it be gaining weight, guys that needed to gain weight, whether it be losing weight, guys that needed to lose weight. Coming out of spring practice, John, there's a lot of guys that had some body weight issues, good or whether it be gaining or losing. And as we sit here right now, we've overcome those. And a couple, don't get me wrong, that still need to probably gain a little bit, lose a little bit, but we're in a great position from that standpoint would be one. How we've gotten stronger. If you look at what our guys the strength gains that they've made from January to now, but in particular from May when they came back until now, we've gotten stronger. There's no question about it. And then you guys have heard me say it before, and it's the truth. Every coach in America would say this, but the summertime is just so critical because that's really when you're forming so much of your team from a leadership standpoint and the mental toughness and all that as well. And they've had some tough, hard, raw moments this summer as a team, and I just feel like we've taken a huge step just from a leadership standpoint, guys being willing to hold each other accountable, call each other out when needed, just things like that. So overall, just I think the physical part of it, but then just the overall team dynamic, I really feel like we've made some strides in that department.
Shane, I know over the last couple of years, transfer portal players continue to just grow in the sport of not just college football, but college sports as a whole. I know it's not apples to oranges, but last year Lamont Paris brings in a lot of new players. Those guys were able to buy in quickly. Number one, do you talk to other coaches in other sports maybe about how they were able to get transfer players to adjust? And what do you think is one of the keys to be able to get those guys to blend in, to be able to achieve the things you want quickly?
Yeah, talk to other people from time to time. I don't know if it's necessarily calling, every coach and quizzing them on how they've handled the portal and things like that. Certainly in certain instances, whether it be Lamont or whoever, just talking to them about how they've been able to do things, not just with the transfer portal, but with their team in general, just culture, roster dynamics, absolutely. For me, Mike, it starts with bringing the right person into the program. Because, yes, I believe our culture's strong here without a doubt, but no matter how strong your culture is, if you bring an absolute turd, am I allowed to say turd? If you bring an absolute turd, I just did, turd into your program, it's going to be hard to overcome that if he doesn't fit what we're about. And we've walked away from guys that in the portal that maybe wanted to come here, that just from being around our players and being around them, I didn't quite think they were going to fit with what we're about. And every time we bring a player into our program, the first team meeting that we have, I tell our players, I brought, Mike Uva into the program, and he's going to fit what we're about, and I believe he's a good person, and yada, 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 and going to help us from that standpoint. So bring the right person into the program, and then once they get in here, that's where it helps us this year because we have so much returning leadership on our team. We vote on captains at the end of the season. Boogie Huntley and Debo Williams were captains for us on the 2023 team of our top, whatever I said. I know I said it in Dallas, but I think of our top however many vote getters for captain, I think top 8 vote getters, maybe 5 of them are back. So we've got a lot of leadership returning, which new guys come into the program, they see from the people in our program how things are done, what this place is about, and then it's easy to just kind of, fall in line. And it's not always easy, the transition, but put a lot of support around them, players, coaches, staff, and having conversations, and then really even do a better job myself of just being more intentional about building relationships and forcing everybody on the team to get to know each other and help bring those guys along. And not patting myself on the back. I think I said it with you guys before, but it makes me feel good when other guys come into our program from other places and they talk about how we do things, and it's different than where they've been and whatnot. And I would hope they would say that because it is different here in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Is there anything to be said about the time? I know people have been looking on the outside, 9:23. Is there any significance, or is that just kind of how it played out?
That's just kind of how it played out. So, not to get too technical, but one of the tweaks that we've made going into this upcoming season is doing a little bit more of we've tweaked some things that we're doing in practice, like I've talked to you guys about trying to be a little bit, hopefully be a little bit healthier as we go into the season. So one thing that we're doing is normally when our guys go from meetings, they go straight from the meetings to the walkthrough. We always start every single day. The very first thing is a special teams walkthrough, and that would be at 9:15, for example. Whereas this year, the first thing they do when they come on the field is we're going to call it activation. Basically, just kind of get their bodies warmed up a little bit before the walkthrough, because a walkthrough for us is a little bit more than a walkthrough. It's like a jog through. So just to I'm probably taking up too much time here. Sorry, Steve. We had an incident this past spring where Joe D was doing something in the special teams walkthrough that required a little bit of jogging, and we had a specialist that slipped essentially coming on the field, potentially pulled something, kind of did pull something, and it was kind of eye-opening, like, oh my God, maybe we need to do a little bit more before the walkthrough just to kind of get their bodies going, because they've been sitting in meetings. So we've never done it before. They've done it a little bit before the weight workout, so we haven't even talked to the players about this. So if you ask them and they come down here, hey, what do you think about the activation period? They're probably going to be like, what? But that's all we're doing. So the 9:23 is the activate. 9:15 is when they got to be on the field tomorrow morning to kind of get the warm up. Then we go into the walkthrough after 8 minutes, which would be 9:23. So anything in our program, it's down to the minutes. This isn't like some new thing. If you look at a practice schedule, it drives my wife and kids crazy, because they're like, why can't you just say 9:20 and 9:25 and 9:30? Because I want that period to be 3 minutes or 6 minutes or 4 minutes and whatnot. So that's why.
Is this okay, Steve? Yeah. Shane, you mentioned you touched on Lenoris a little bit earlier. When you bring a guy like that in here, I mean, he could have probably won the starting job at a lot of different places across the country. He comes in here knowing, hey, you know, my year's not going to be spent, a lot of it on the field.
Yeah.
What does that say about the kind of person he is, the character he is, that kind of guy that you hope to have leading this team?
Yeah, I think that's a great point in that he could have won a state championship and had other schools obviously recruiting him. He wanted to stay at home and came here. But I don't want to speak for Lenoris, but I think it was very much got a chance to sit behind and learn from Spencer for a year. You guys have heard me say it a bunch. That I saw Spencer do that with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma as well. So I think the opportunity, one, stay in state, come to the University of South Carolina. It's not about, you know, I know everybody wants to play immediately and it's about instant gratification. I think he saw it as a year to redshirt and get stronger and learn the offense and put himself in position to have a great 2024. But not just Lenoris. I mean, I got all the respect in the world for Robbie Ashford. He's essentially did the same thing coming here to compete as well. And that, you know, Robbie, a lot of the quarterbacks, you guys know that we were active in the transfer portal market for quarterbacks. And there are some quarterbacks that went to other schools that wanted to come here, and rightfully so because of what we did with Spencer in the portal, or what Spencer did coming here out of the portal, wanted to come here, but they wanted to be promised the starting quarterback job. And right back there, that core value says compete. I'm a fraud if we don't truly compete. So I didn't promise the job to anybody, including Robbie Ashford or Davis Bevel, but both those guys came here for the opportunity to compete. And I think it says a lot about those guys as well, that they didn't want something handed to them. Lenoris knew he needed to come in here and work. Nothing's been handed to him, but I think it goes back to him, the kind of person he is, his mom and dad, and high school program he's coming from, and saw the benefits here at South Carolina so much better and more for him long term and not just immediate.
The last 2 years, you've had to have a true freshman play first quarter of game one because of injuries. When you're going through a camp, is there a sign or maybe a couple signs that a true freshman might be ready to go week one right out of the chute that you look for?
Yeah. Another great point. We talked about that a lot as a staff this morning, just some of the injuries that we've had early in the year, and you're right about last year, and then really the year before with Nicky Mamori when we had a safety that came out of the game, and then Nick comes in. It's just like right away. I think just the moment's not too big for them. You know, they don't have a lot of issues, and coaches have said it before, kind of how you do anything is how you do everything, and we just watched a video on Eric Spoelstra, the head coach of the Miami Heat, talking about that with LeBron James when LeBron played for the Heat, and how he did everything, whether how his locker looked to how he handled his nutrition. He just did everything right. I think I look for that. And when you talk about the guys that have come in and had to play for us early as a true freshman, whether it be Jalen Kilgore on, was at the second play of the game last year against North Carolina, Nick early, both those guys specifically are guys that they're never on any list. I mean, they just do everything right on the field and off the field. And I think that's a sign, certainly, for one. They just kind of handle their business, and you realize that they're not a guy that's late for this or missing this or not going to class. They just handle their business, and they're a pro. And that, to me, equates on the field. But then the other thing that I would say also is the way college football is nowadays, with all these guys, most of them being here in January, you've seen that, and you've had a chance to develop them even more leading into the first game as well. I mean, the days of, I don't want to be like back when I played, but not that long ago, freshmen didn't even show up till July. And then you practiced for 3 weeks, or you lifted weights for about 3 weeks, and you went and practiced, and that was it. And then before that, freshmen didn't even show up until August, and they just went straight to practice, and then they played as well. So I think it's one of those, you get more time with them to help develop them for the first game. But then certainly there's character signs that are very evident to me that say, okay, this guy's going to have a chance to help you as a freshman.
You mentioned, just how many guys are coming back from injury, and the activation period is one thing to, hopefully prevent injury. Has there been anything else after last season in the offensive line that you guys have tried to do to, prevent those things from happening, such as the activation period?
Yeah, and don't make too big a deal out of the activation period. It was really, our guys have kind of been doing it for the weight room all summer. Like, hey, let's get warmed up before we go lift weights, and they come in here every day. So if all summer long, the weight workout started right here in this end zone where you guys are sitting for weight workouts. They came in here, they did stuff leading up to the workout in the weight room, then they went and did the running and the lifting. So it's really just a carryover from what they've been doing in the weight room in a lot of ways as well. And let's just get these guys. This was something back when Chip Kelly was coaching for the Eagles, and I went up there one time and watched them practice, and they essentially did it. They had the whole team in the weight room, and they kind of got warmed up and revved up, and then they hit the field and full speed ahead from that point for practice. So it's nothing like we're doing anything like rocket or earth-shattering. But to answer your question, I think it's all started going back literally to January in a lot of ways with how we've done things. And I talked about it in whether Dallas or the media golf last week that we've, tweaked some things in the weight room, nothing major, but just tweak some of the exercises that we're doing, some of the things that we're doing just from a physical standpoint with their bodies, nutrition, training room, leading into the summer. We're certainly going to tweak some things. I'm going to talk to the players about it tonight, just not so much, how we practice, but the schedule during the week, maybe a little bit more conducive to taking care of their bodies, whether it be getting out of here. Normally in preseason camp, we're getting out of here. The players are last few years 9:15-ish at night. This year is going to be probably closer to 8:30 each night when they're done over here. Or each night before they leave, they're going to be required to do some sort of like recovery exercise before they get out of here, just to really try and prevent stuff on the front end as well. But then again, a lot of the injuries that happened last season, like no matter what you do, whether you have an activation period, you don't have an activation period, whether you have a walkthrough at 9:23 or 9:15, or they get out of here at 8:30 or 9:15, whatever it is. Case and Henry getting rolled up on in a game against North Carolina, you can't prevent that, but it's a lot of the soft tissue things that are preventable that you hope you do on the front that are hopefully preventable, whether it be somebody tearing his ACL covering a kickoff last year against North Carolina, or somebody trying to chase down a ball carrier on the sideline and pulling his hamstring, or somebody tearing his ACL jumping up to bat a pass the year before against Arkansas. Just trying to do as much looking at things and to prevent them. Taking care of their bodies, which they've got to be a pro about also. And then for us too, we've gone back as myself and the training staff and the strength and conditioning staff and looking at injuries. We took 45 minutes this morning as a whole coaching staff and just went back and watched every single injury from spring practice that resulted in a player missing more than one day of practice. And okay, here's all the ankles, here's all the hamstrings, here's all the knees, we had one concussion because a guy tripped and fell and hit his head on the ground, but how can we prevent those? Were there signs leading up to it? Was we got too many people on the ground, or somebody tripped, and just looking at everything that you're doing, but also understanding, I'll shut up, I know this is like the longest answer in the history of like press conferences, but realizing that last year for us, and you said it in your question, it was primarily the offensive line centric were the injuries. But if you look at our overall injuries, it was pretty much on average with what we've had in previous years in a lot of ways, and it pretty much on average with the rest of the country in regards to the number of injuries that we had. For us, it just happened to be at one position where we lost, 6 to season-ending injuries and had 9 different starting lineup combinations in the first 9 games. So it was, yes, you have to look at the offensive line, and I think they've taken on a lot of that on their own. They stayed up here the whole month of May. We didn't make them. They wanted to stay because they're tired of, not necessarily you guys, but they're tired of hearing people talk about how bad they are. So they really wanted to come up here and get their bodies right, get their nutrition right, get their body weight right, work together as a unit, and get better in the month of May. So when their teammates came back in June, they're like, oh, shoot, look at what the offensive line's been doing in the whole month of May. And I think that's happened as well. And they've taken it upon themselves. And it all starts, like I said, weight room, nutrition, training room, and then anything that we can do to help them as well. So, sit down after that answer. Sorry.
Two short roster questions.
All right.
Can you update the status of Jerome Simmons and any other changes on the roster since last Thursday?
Yeah, Jerome Simmons was a signee that we still hope will be a member of our football program going forward. He isn't right now and won't be this season, but optimistic that he will be in 2025. And nothing new that I'm aware of on our team. There nobody that we've added since last week, and nobody that unless somebody didn't like the team meeting I just had and they've walked out of here since I came down, nobody's left the program that I'm aware of.
With the college video game out, Nick Harbor is probably one of the top players in that game. What does he need to do to achieve some of those abilities or unlock some of those abilities this year? What did he do in the summer to get there? What do you want to see from him out of the camp?
Yeah. First of all, the game's amazing, isn't it? I mean, we had a little tournament last week with our players, and then my son's been playing it, but he had it in his room last week, and we were playing at the house here in Columbia, and just the fact that you can now get, what is it, Glory Road or Glory whatever, where you get recruited and all that. Road to Glory, I think that's what it is. Don't act like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Y'all played it. But he chose to go to a school in the game because they promised him the starting quarterback job as well. So clearly I failed with my son in that whatnot. And then he tells me he started playing a season with the team that he went to. He went and played for Mississippi State because Mississippi State promised him the starting quarterback job. And then I saw him the next day and I asked him how the season was going. He told me that he was having academic issues, so he was suspended for a game as well. And I'm like, God almighty, like I had 120 in our program that I can't even get my own son straight with the video game as well. But then he also told me that he's now entered the transfer portal because some other school in this game is promising a different stuff as well. So I say that the game's unbelievable, almost too real in a lot of ways, clearly. And I wonder why I struggle with things as the head football coach, because that's what everybody's dealing with now in the game. Nick Harbor needs to continue to work like he's been working. I think the fact that he's putting forth the effort, even when he was busy with track in the spring, he was at football meetings every morning when he was in town. He was on the practice field with us when it didn't interfere with track. Not practicing, but at least out here with us. And then the fact that he was out in Oregon for all of their stuff, and then immediately afterwards said he was not going to pursue the Olympic thing this year, and he was ready to start focusing on football, I think says a lot about, what he's about. And then the thing for him is Nick's just got to continue to work. I mean, you think about it, Mike Furry's been our receivers coach, and he's never actually worked with Nick on the practice field yet. So tomorrow will be the first time that Mike and Nick have ever worked together because Nick didn't really go through spring practice. Now, they've been meeting a lot and things like that and doing some summer workouts that we're allowed to do within the rules. But as far as actual practice, tomorrow will be Nick's first practice with Mike. And so we've got to get him better and a lot of our receivers better. But I think the thing for him, yeah, he's big and he can run really, really fast. But there's so much more to playing a receiver than just that, releases, catching the ball, understanding how to beat coverage and techniques and things like that. And he's worked at all that since he got here last year and has really worked hard this summer as well. And I think the thing with him is just let's let Nick just continue to develop. And there's a lot of my message to him, look, there's a lot of expectations on you. You got this 99 rating in this video game, and we had recruits here last week, and they're all like, man, 99, Nick Harbor, and they know, and he's known nationally because of that. And the Bruce Feldman did his freaks thing last year, and he was the number one freak in college football and all that as well. All that's great, but, Nick just wants to be a young man, work really, really hard, and try and be the best football player that he can be, and we're here to support him and help him accomplish all of that as best we can.
Shane, two quick things. Did you go back and look at your rating in the game at all, or you didn't delve into that at all?
No, if that even exists, I'd be afraid to see that as well. But my son started asking me last night. Yesterday was his birthday, so we were sitting around and having a birthday party with him, and he asked me, about when I was in college, the NIL opportunities I had and how much I made and things like that. I'm like, zero. And he's like, zero? Man, and I told him even if there was NIL, Dad wouldn't have been making anything from an NIL standpoint, I can assure you.
Fun fact, my son's birthday was also yesterday.
No kidding. Well, tell him happy birthday.
I will.
Yeah,
Well,
two great sons that were born on the 31st.
That's right. You're going to have a few more coaches out there on the field, guys kind of putting their voices in. What does that do to your voice out on the field? Do you kind of let them call the shots and you give them the overall message and they filter it down? How's that going to work now that you're going to have more people out there?
Yeah, I think it's great. I don't think it really changes anything for me. I'm going to continue to do what I do. Yes, there'll be more voices coaching, but, I believe in hiring. Don't get me wrong. Y'all have been out there enough. Y'all seen me at practice. I'm engaged. I'm involved with everything, all three phases. But I would like to think that I have hired, I know I have hired great coaches and let them go and coach and do their jobs and trust them to get the job done as well. And I don't want to be a guy out there that's, not undermining, but coaching every little thing they say. Most of the stuff I do is typically in the meetings before practice. Here's what we're doing in practice. Here's what I expect. Here's what needs to get done. I think the biggest thing is it'll help. Like we do a lot of stuff in practice where we've got two different drills going on at the same time. So like tomorrow, for example, when we do a team period, we'll have half the offense and defense on this field over here to closest to the building, and then half the offense and defense on the other field, and it'll be 11 on 11 work, but everybody's getting reps. There's nobody standing around. Well, in the past, you had to be very strategic about how you broke up the staff because the analysts couldn't coach. So if the first team offense is on this field and the second team offense, we don't have a depth chart. They're all competing, but the guys that are with the first group that day and the guys that are with the second group that day, they're on two different fields. Well, Dow Loggins coaching the quarterbacks couldn't be in two different places, or Mike coaching the receivers couldn't be in two different places. So you really could only put the graduate assistant opposite them because they were the only ones allowed to coach. The analysts could be there, but they couldn't coach. Now you don't have to worry about that. So now if Mike Shula is working with the quarterbacks along with Dow can be on this field, Mike can go over there, and you're not worried about it, Or Trey Money, who's working with our linebackers with Clayton, Trey can be on one field, Clayton can be on the other, and they can both coach the linebackers and whatnot, whereas in the past you couldn't do that. So that's where it'll really help, and it's good for them. It's a good opportunity for them, and we got a lot of good young and veteran coaches on this staff, and it's great for our players and their development also as well.